All right. Today we're talking about grief. Yes, I know. Nothing says great conference energy like a grown man emotionally unraveling and trying to keep it professional. Hi, I'm Michael Preston. I'm the Associate Vice President for Student Success at Texas State University. And that's exactly what I just might do today. Because grief does impact our experiences and those of our students in higher ed. We spend so much time focused on how to support our students. We rarely talk about what it takes to keep showing up when we are the ones who are falling apart. In 2022, I lost my best friend and closest collaborator, Dr. Adam Peck. And when I say collaborator, I don't just mean someone I CC'd on projects. He was the person I text daily. The guy who turned budget meetings into rejected SNL sketches and could pivot from pop culture to assessment models without missing a beat. We were the stepbrothers of higher ed. We were nerds with big ideas and bad impressions. Too many overly inspirational Anthony Bourdain quotes at the most uninspiring moments. And then one day, I got the call. Everything stopped. My co-pilot, he was gone. So no, this isn't a typical conference speech, but I think it might be one of the most important. Because I've come to believe supporting students starts with supporting each other and ourselves. No one embodied that idea more than Adam. From the start, our friendship was about showing up for the work and for each other. We met in our early 20s, volunteering at a National Association for Campus Activities event. Random hallway, random city, Houston, Texas. He was talking to someone about comedy. I was walking by, probably looking for snacks. Then we locked into one of those conversations that starts off casual. 4 minutes later, we've covered student development theory and Anthony Bourdain's entire career arc. We were both first-gen college students, pop culture nerds, fluent in humor with a shared love of deep conversation and the occasional fart joke. It was one of those weirdly cinematic moments, like, did we just become best friends? Yes, we did. From that point on, we were emotionally unstable, but creatively thriving. We spoke in SNL quotes to an unhealthy degree. Some days, the only language we spoke in was a bad British accent. Our full-on Morrissey quotes, and if you love Morrissey, you're one of my people. Eventually, our staff put us on unofficial quote probation. But it worked, not the quote probation, but the friendship. The weirdness, the humor, it built trust. And beneath all the bits, we were building something real. We started talking about a problem we both saw, not in students, but in how we described their growth. The issue wasn't a lack of skills. It was that students didn't know how to explain what they'd learned in ways that employers understood. So we built the co-curricular connections model as a way to help students translate their outside the classroom learning into real-world language. I was the metaphor guy, the dreamer. Adam was the structure guy, the make it work in Excel guy. I'd say, let's reimagine how students tell their stories. He'd say, cool, but let's make sure it survives a budget meeting. Our best ideas came when we weren't trying. Like in Boston, we were at a conference, hit with imposter syndrome. We took a snowy walk down to Harvard Square, found a pub, ordered some pints, bar food, and spent 7 hours building the foundation of our white paper. That day, 2 guys, never thought they belonged at Harvard, was one of the best work days of my life. Because it wasn't just about what we built. It was about who I got to build it with. We were going to travel the world, spreading our ideas. What I didn't know was how soon I'd be writing that chapter's end alone. It was September 2022. We talked earlier in the day, just some banter and a weather report, classic us. Then the call came. Michael, I'm sorry, but Adam was hit by an e-bike on campus. He's not going to make it. It was everything and nothing all at once. I stared at my phone. I refreshed my texts. I was hoping for one last message, a joke, a 30 Rock quote, a bad Morrissey take, but there was nothing. No more daily texts, no more Al Pacino debates, no more 2 a.m. can I run this metaphor by you messages. The loss hit like a freight train. And the suddenness made it worse. No warning, no chance to say goodbye, just silence. And in that silence, everything got heavier. He wasn't just my friend, he was the one I built things with. He was the one who made the hard days easier, who turned tension into laughter, who made the work feel less like work. And now I had to keep going without him. No playbook and no script. Just the weight of grief and a job that didn't stop. So I had to bring my grief to work with me, hidden deep inside. But grief doesn't follow a script. It's not neat. There's no timeline, no tidy resolution, just a mess. And I tried to avoid all of it. I told myself I was fine. I kept working. I kept showing up. I kept performing functional human like it was a role I didn't want to lose. But I wasn't fine. I just opened my laptop and just freeze. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to keep doing this without Adam in the picture. Everything felt heavier. Emails, meetings, even small talk in the hallway. And all the things we built together, the things I once loved, suddenly felt like they belonged in another life. People noticed. Friends, coworkers, my boss. They said they saw what I couldn't say. Eventually, my supervisor pulled me aside. She said, "You're not okay, and you don't have to pretend to be." She made me take time off. She suggested therapy. Therapy felt like a fine, whatever kind of fix. But I went because I didn't know what else to do at that time. And in the first session, I broke. Crying in front of a stranger, it didn't fix anything, but it let me stop pretending. It let me exhale. All I could think was, how do I do this without him? Not just as a friend, but as a professional, as someone who still had work to do. People to lead, students to support. I didn't want to fall apart, but I couldn't fake it anymore. And that was the start of the healing, not yet, but of honesty. The kind that lets you drop the act and be human again. And for me and Adam, human equaled humor, which was perfect because one of the strange things about grief, at least for me, is that it didn't erase the humor. It just warped it. Adam and I were fluent in dark comedy. We joked about everything, especially the heavy stuff. So in the middle of all the pain, my brain did what it always does, and it made an inappropriate joke. I remember thinking, what if Adam faked his death as some performance art? It was absurd, right? Still makes me laugh. And honestly, that kind of humor saved me. It wasn't just our thing, it was how I kept him close. I'd catch myself slipping into the bad British accents we used in meetings, debating out loud whether my Al Pacino impression was finally edged out his. Ooh-ah! No, it hadn't. We were both terrible at it. Even at my lowest, I'd think, at least he'd laugh at this. or more likely, mock me for doing it wrong. Humor didn't erase the grief, but it gave it shape, something to hold on to, and everything else slipped away. Because if I could still laugh, he wasn't completely gone. Somewhere in the haze of grief, all that warped humor, and probably sleep deprivation, I remember this running joke Adam and I had. One day, let's walk 100,000 steps in a day. No reason, foot picture, just one of those wild, pointless goals that made sense to two guys who procrastinated by dreaming big. After he died, I couldn't shake it, so I did it. 50 miles, one day, just me, a backpack, and my grief. At first, it felt right. Quiet, reflective, like a tribute. Then mile 20 hit. My legs turned to cement. My back screamed. In my head, I heard, Adam, Michael, you are an absolute idiot, but also, I'm kind of proud of you. By mile 30th, I was delirious. I was swearing out loud. I was singing SNL theme songs, doing terrible Christopher Walken impersonations, to passing ducks. It was absurd. It was exhausting, and it was exactly what I needed. When I reached 100,000 steps, my body was wrecked, but my heart felt lighter. Not because the grief was gone. It wasn't. I finally just moved with it. Sat in it, or I guess technically walked in it. Let it be ridiculous and sacred all at once. And for a few miles, I swear I wasn't walking alone. But even though 100,000 lightened my steps, remember how I said grief is a mess and it doesn't follow a timeline? Well, it didn't just magically go away, and it wasn't just the personal grief that hit me. It was carrying that grief while still doing the work and still showing up. Still pretending to be the steady one. That's part of what we don't talk about enough in higher ed. We focus on student trauma, safe spaces, support systems, interventions. But what about us? What about the staff member who holds a space for a student in crisis right after crying in their car? What about the advisor barely holding it together while trying to seem composed? There's a name for that. It's called vicarious trauma. We don't live the story, but we absorb it. And it's real and heavy and mostly invisible. We push through because we're trained to stay calm, to be the anchor, and grief, it doesn't care about your job title. I think about how often Adam and I laughed through the hardest stuff. Sometimes absurdity is the only way to survive. Inside jokes, impressions, one-liners. It gave us breath when everything felt heavy. The biggest lesson I've learned from the worst time in my life, we can't support our students if we ignore our own pain. You can't pour from an empty cup. And you shouldn't have to. So to feel less alone after Adam died, I clung to some of the work that we built together. We had talked about presenting the co-curricular connections model at a conference in Singapore one day, but we never did. So in the spirit of keeping our work going, and to keep it from becoming a relic, I decided to finally take that trip, and I went to Singapore, alone. It was a conference we had dreamed about, the one where we'd finally present our model on an international stage. We were supposed to go together to celebrate the thing we'd built over bar food and big ideas. Instead, I packed the presentation we created side by side, alone, boarded the plane, alone, and stood on that stage, alone. It was heartbreaking, but I knew Adam would have wanted me to go, not just to share the work, but to keep the spirit of it alive. Getting on that plane nearly broke me, but I showed up, I asked big questions, and in the quiet moments, I could almost hear him beside me saying something ridiculous in that bad British accent like, "You're doing fine, mate. Just don't forget to laugh at yourself." So I did. Not right away, but eventually. What I've learned? It's okay to fall apart. It's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to laugh through the tears, especially if it sounds like Christopher Walken trying to do Yoda. You know how I said the work continues? That the work continues? Well, it does. In Adam's memory, his wife Michelle, along with my own daughter Caroline, have teamed up to work on legislation in Texas and Illinois, and hopefully one day federally, to reclassify e-bikes as motor vehicles, and hopefully to make our sidewalks safer for pedestrians. It won't bring him back, but it can help his spirit live on. Let me know if you want to help spread the word. Easy to find me, because grief doesn't erase who we are, it simply changes us. It requires us to carry our loved ones with us. And the quotes, and the bad impressions, and the ideas described and scribbled on bar napkins. And the work we keep doing, and the people we keep becoming. Support students, yes. But don't forget, supporting each other starts with making a space for our own humanity. Thank you.